All right, hello. Got a bright light behind me. It looks like I'm Revenge of the Jedi or something. That's pretty cool. So people are rolling in, a lot of last minute enrollments. I'm going to be giving away a free course today. And I'm not going to make you wait to the end for that either, but a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is another specific cloud, and that would be the nonprofit success pack and just the nonprofit space. This is important because you can actually get jobs in this space, but also you can get experience via nonprofit volunteering. And that's the key to how a lot of people have launched their careers. And I'm going to be talking about some words of warning because it's not so easy to do this. And there's a few things that you need to consider when going down the path of volunteering so that you don't mess up a Salesforce org out there, basically. So now let's dive in though, and I'll just kind of, rather than burying the lead or making you wait forever, let me get you that free course as promised. And I'll be sharing a lot of links in the chat. And so just look for those in the chat. And I'll be distributing a replay for those of you that have registered. So some of you may be watching this later on replay. So in the chat, I'm putting the link to the free course, and this is on MyQuiler Media Plus. And I released a 11 module bootcamp series, and module 8 is called the Nonprofit Cloud Success Pack. And so I've got a link to that. I've made that freely available on MyQuiler Media Plus. And so I encourage you to check that out. I'll be going into more depth in that course and a lot more resources that I'm not going to be able to go into live here today. We should be live for at least 45 minutes, if not longer. Now, in addition to the chat, I want to highlight or draw your attention to the Q&A section, and that's where you can send in questions to me, and I will do my best to get those answered just as quickly as I can. And it can be related to nonprofit work and volunteering, or how to find volunteer opportunities, or it could be something entirely unrelated as well. I did have one question come in advance of this. It seems like there's always a good question that comes in right before I go live. And this one was from Christina, and she mentions that I'm the Salesforce admin at my nonprofit since I'm the IT manager. Still, I'm new to the platform. I just completed the Salesforce Trailhead Bootcamp, which was a big help. It's made me think of ways to better use Salesforce. I've wanted to implement a help desk for our organization. I think we can do this with Salesforce. If you agree, I'd like your opinion on the best approach to accomplish this. And so a help desk is where people can receive help. And so there's a few ways that you can do that. I'm gonna have to speak very high level. I'm not gonna be able to demonstrate this right now, but in order to answer Christina's question, a help desk is where you want to try to deflect cases or deflect calls. And so you can implement Salesforce Knowledge and provide knowledge articles and make those searchable by your users as well. And you can do that inside of a community. And let's see, I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head here, but you would want to implement Service Cloud so that if their questions aren't answered by your knowledge articles, they can submit a question. And you can also implement ideas, and this is much how Salesforce implements their own ideas exchange in the success community, and that's where people will vote on different ideas that eventually get made as updates onto the platform. So I do think that Salesforce can be used for a help desk. There are other solutions out there as well, of course, but if you're already using Salesforce, I think it's good to put as much inside of Salesforce as you can. And that kind of leads me to my next topic. And this is something that I sent out via email earlier this morning and also posted on LinkedIn. And this is an event that's happening tomorrow. And where's that link? Just trying to rearrange my windows here. So this is something being done by IBM. I'm actually not on this call tomorrow, but I will be attending. And they have asked me to forward any questions that anyone in my community might have related to how to pivot related to COVID. And let me give you that link as well. And I'll share on my screen here momentarily. And that's called Engage Everywhere to Emerge Stronger with Salesforce. And that looks like, not this, this is my free course that I gave you the link for, but let me get everything. So one thing about Zoom, I've noticed, this little aside, little lagniappe for you here, is that whenever you share something, the controls move all over the place. I'm trying to look on this screen, but then it pops up over there, so you see me craning my neck, but I digress. So with LinkedIn, or on LinkedIn, they're going live tomorrow, and this is IBM, and it's has to do with how companies are using Salesforce to pivot and to respond to this new environment that we find ourselves in with trying to get back to work during this pandemic. And so they've got a couple of experts that are going to be talking live about that. And so if you have any questions, you can attend that, and the link, there isn't any links in the chat. Hi, Conrad, how are you? I think you were on live last night with me, right? So in my live class, I recognize the name. So I'm starting to get to know you guys. Let me look in the chat. Where's my chat? Oh, you know what? I'm messing up. I'm not perfect sometimes. So let me change that to panelists and attendees. I'm just sending the links to myself, which does no good at all. So obviously, so thank you, everyone. Everyone's in the chat saying, hey, there's no links. There's no links. Sorry. It's a senior moment. You know, I'm 50 now, so I qualify for my senior moment discount. So anywho, all right, so first link, let me backtrack a little bit here. This is one of Mike Wheeler's greatest hits today. I can just tell, I feel it in the air, you know. So, all right, so the first link was the free course on Mike Wheeler Media Plus. This is going to all attendees now. Bam, there you go. Next is the IBM event. You know, it livens things up when I make a mistake, which is quite common because then I can make fun of myself. I'm really good at self-deprecating humor because I give myself so many opportunities to practice on it. There's the second one, the IBM event, that's tomorrow, okay? Now, as well, all right, another thing that I want to mention though, and moving on from the IBM event, which is tomorrow, is you can attend that, or you can get a question into me and I'll forward it on to the team. And but I think that it's going to be insightful related. It has a good alignment with things that I've talked about a lot on my podcast, You Relevant, which you may or may not be aware of. And let me give you that link real quickly as well while I'm thinking of it. But I tend to talk about how to find the intersection of attainable and essential. And so what is attainable to me is Salesforce. That's what I gravitated towards many years ago because I saw it as a tool that would empower me to make enterprise level apps with clicks instead of code. And so since that's attainable to the vast majority of humanity, that does even the playing field for you to be able to create things and to execute on ideas, whether those ideas are your own or someone else's. So those are the themes that I talk about all the time on my podcast. And those are like higher level thoughts than click here, do this. And I do a lot of teaching specifically where to click and what to do and why, but higher level as to how this makes you relevant in the economy of now. That's why I call it You Relevance. So this particular session looks like it will align closely to things that I kind of hold near and dear as to how you can find relevance in the economy of now. So with that said, another thing to mention, if you want to register for future episodes of this show, this live call-in where I make fun of myself for 45 minutes as I chat to myself, is you can go to MikeWheelerMediaLive.com. That redirects to this registration page. And so you've registered for this one, obviously, because you're watching live. But the way that this works, I want to highlight something is you can go back in there and you can register for these future dates. And I would just check them all. That way you don't miss out. And I just plan on doing this indefinitely on Tuesdays at this time. And so anyway, so that's that. So MikeWheelerMediaLive.com will take you to the Zoom registration page, okay? And be sure you grab this free course. So now let's talk about nonprofit success. There's a ton of resources in this space. And if you recall, if you joined me last week, we talked specifically about the financial services cloud. And I had, you know, the question come in from Christina where she actually is working in the nonprofit space. And then I had someone else reach out on LinkedIn asking about nonprofit success. And so I thought, well, this would be a good topic for today. And it is another cloud offering by Salesforce. But beyond that being focused on individuals that work in that space, I want to take a higher view of this as well. This will serve a couple of purposes. This will be another example of how you can niche down in any industry. And I'm going to be using the nonprofit space as an example. But also the reason that this particular niche or industry is so important and powerful to anyone that's wanting to get started out in Salesforce is because it is one of the two primary ways that I tell people to make their own experience. And so just kind of rewinding a little bit, you will be told when you're starting out in anything, whether it's Salesforce or making pizzas or washing cars or working at Home Depot, if you've never done those sort of things before, you will be told that you don't have enough experience. And it's the typical catch-22 chicken and egg scenario is how do you get experience without a job? How do you get the job without experience? And so the advice that I always give and I preach from this side of the monitor is to make your own experience. And you can do that one of two ways. And that would be growing where you're planted. And that would be in an existing job. You raise your hand or you try to work Salesforce into your existing job. Another way is that you can volunteer. Now, typically, there's not a lot of volunteer opportunities out there, but if you're going to find volunteer work, your best odds of finding something would be with a nonprofit organization. And I got a question from Marcus asking about my podcast. It's not unrelevant, it's irrelevance. So did I type that wrong? No, I got it right. So let me make sure I got my link right. So here it is, irrelevant, and here I'm looking pensively off the bridge here. I'm not going to jump off the bridge, but it's on Anchor and elsewhere. But your question was, are you sharing audio and video or just audio? So on the podcast, it's audio only, but there are some episodes that I draw from live stuff like this where I'm also on video. So I will link to those videos in the resources of the podcast so you can listen, and or whenever there's video available, I provide the link as well. All right. So we got that one answered. See how I'm in squirrel mode. I'm like, oh, a question. Let me just go over there. All right. I was afraid I'd typed it in wrong. So let's talk about nonprofit. Okay. And keep the questions rolling in the Q&A. And so first off, on the Trailhead community, there's these nonprofit community groups. And so one way that you can start to network and find volunteer opportunities beyond some of the volunteer boards that I'm going to share here momentarily is to connect with the nonprofit space as it relates to Salesforce in your local community. And there's a lot of these groups here. I'm just going to scroll through and I'll give you the link as well. But here's like Boston, US has 985 members. Hyderabad, India has 34 members. Kochi, 3. Jackson, US, I'm not sure which Jackson. Bozeman, Montana, 92 members. So you see that some of these are larger than others, but you can get involved or start your own nonprofit community. Let me give you that link. And in there, you will learn about what's going on in the nonprofit space in your local community. And here's the link in the chat for that. And I believe you can filter this down. Perhaps not. I thought there was a way you could do a map. I've seen maps of this before, but as you can see, there's a ton of these community groups. And so here's Pittsburgh, US, may have to log in. So you can get more details around that. Here's where you can gain a lot of intelligence on people in a specific industry. And they have these community groups for other industries as well. We just happen to be talking about the nonprofit space, but you can see here recent posts and the 214 members, and you can get names and information. So this is a way to do some direct networking and trying to get an inroads for some of these opportunities. All right, so next resource are some websites that will reveal some volunteer opportunities. Now, the first one is Taproot. And so let me give you that link. And this will be a link specific to searching for the term Salesforce, okay? And so in the chat, first up is Taproot. And there you go on that. And so there are several projects that are Salesforce related. And there's one for a Salesforce implementation with Redefiners World Languages, Inc. Estimated completion time is 6 to 9 weeks in Tampa, Florida. There's a Croatian Institute in Durham, North Carolina, 6 to 9 week project, Salesforce related. And then there's other things that mention Salesforce, but are maybe not Salesforce specific. Here's To Empower Women, Falls Church, Virginia, and it's a WordPress website development. And here's Salesforce development for international child advancement out of Buffalo, New York. Now, why am I going into all this? A lot of people are lazy. They don't want to give away their time. They want things to just come easily. So this is a filter to filter those people out. Now, you have opportunities out there to raise your hand and say, I'll do that for free. Typically, these are volunteer opportunities. They're not paid, but what this gives you once you've done a successful implementation is experience on your resume and stories to tell in the interview room. That is what it's about. And if you need to work on anything, even beyond your Salesforce skills, it would be your communication and storytelling skills so that you have the ability to convince someone, even though you don't have a lot of experience, that you're confident you'll be able to figure things out and you're able to answer the questions. What have you done on the platform? What is the most complex thing that you've solved on the platform? And you can demo that on an iPad or your phone or with printouts in an interview to be able to show that you've actually done some of these things. You've been presented with real world challenges. And then as well, you may come away with references, people that can vouch for your ability or endorse your skills on LinkedIn. And the list just goes on and on. So a website such as Taproot is one to where there are organizations that post a project, and then there's volunteers that search for a project, and it's like this matchmaking service. But there's still the interview process. Now, typically with these different websites, and I'll show another one here in a moment, they will limit the number of applicants. And so you want to apply, and then they will decide those from that pool of applicants whom they would like to interview. Typically it's more than one, but it's somewhere between 3 to 5 people interviewing. So there's some competition. This gives you practice for interviewing as well and identifying your weaknesses. And you've got to win the opportunity to give away your time, basically, which may sound foreign or wrong, but having a successful implementation or project or anything Salesforce related on your LinkedIn profile and your resume is truly, it's like gold. It really opens up the opportunities for you even before you're certified. You don't have to be certified in order to do this. And with the resources I share with you today and the free course that I've shared with you, you'll be well on your way to being able to understand what you need to know that is different or a potential gotcha related to the data model of the nonprofit space, because it is vastly different. So it's not a cakewalk, I might add. All right, so this is Taproot. Next is Catchafire. We briefly looked at Catchafire last week, but I'm gonna give you the link for this. And I was kind of interested to see if there were still any volunteer opportunities on Catchafire, and there were. And so here's a CRM audit. Here's Salesforce training for families empowered. So, you may have an opportunity to do something similar to what I do, which is training. And it is some organization called Families Empowered that I guess has implemented Salesforce. And now they need someone to train their users and their volunteers. Here's another CRM audit, database audit, a lot of these. Here's a setup one. So this one is more, I think these audit ones are evaluating Salesforce and other CRMs and trying to evaluate and tell them which one they should use. So it's not such a specific admin type of thing, but here would be one that would fall under that. This would be this customer database setup with full spectrum features, NFP. And then here's another setup and another audit. So there's about 8 projects. So if you can get any of these, really, it's something that you can put on your resume. And there's more details on how this all works somewhere on their website. So for volunteers, discover Catchafire, and this will explain how they work, okay? So I see Deidre raised her hand. So Deidre, if you have a question, if you could put it in the Q&A, and if you're wanting to ask, oh, that's another thing. So if you have a question, you can type it up in the Q&A and I can just answer it. Or if you want to try and talk, I can unmute you and you can then turn on your microphone. I've got to ask to unmute you and then you turn on your microphone. So just let me know in the Q&A, anyone else. All right, that's good. So no harm, no foul, Deidre. She accidentally raised her hand. So, but with that being said, if you would like to try to appear on audio, which may lead to you being in a future episode of my podcast, for example, then just put in the Q&A your question and then just put in parentheses microphone or audio or something like that. All right, so here's kind of a diagram or more information though on how Catch Fire works. Taproot is very similar. All right, so now some of the resources that I share in this course on my platform, which if you just go to learn.mikewheelermedia.com, you can find it. And I shared the link previously, but it's Bootcamp Part 8, or you can always search for it as well. Where's my search? Got to search for my search. This will take me back to browse. Nope. So here's my search. So you could just do nonprofit, and this will pull up any courses, which are called collections on my platform, and any specific videos where I talk about any sort of concept. So I do encourage you to use my website as a search engine as well. I think it's an under-realized resource that is out there and available to you. So, but this should be available to you. All right, so now, but inside of this, I've got a lot of resources. And so, for example, finding volunteer Salesforce opportunities, that's the final lesson in that course. And there's more resources there as well. So I do encourage you to check out any resources there. But one that I mentioned in that course is how you can install the Nonprofit Success Pack in your own free developer account. Now, let me give you this link as well. This is the NPSP latest install link, and this changes, but Salesforce sets it up to dynamically redirect to the most latest release. So this is the, I guess, evergreen link, if you will, that I'm putting in the chat right now. And NPSP stands for Nonprofit Success Pack. It used to be called the Success Plan. They changed it to Pack. And so there's details on how to install that. I also walk you through how to install that in the free course that I just gave you as well. Now, there's a few steps that I would recommend that you do when you're working in the nonprofit space, is that I would encourage you to start off with installing the Nonprofit Success Pack in a free developer account, not one that you care about or that you've done a lot of work in or you've done a lot of customizations, or one that you plan to use for your trailhead trails, but a separate new free developer account that you could then install the Nonprofit Success Pack in, because it does fundamentally change the data model. So I don't want you to mess up some org that you care about or something that may be hard to get or revert back to its original state, all right? And the reason why that's important is I'll show you some of the data models and what this looks like here momentarily. And keep those questions coming in, and make sure my messages are not popping up on the screen. So I'm going to quit my messaging. There's a lot of chatter about the HOA election, so I can talk kind of freely about this now. I lost, so oh well, I'm over it. So let me share my screen. Sorry, I told you I was in squirrel mode. So here we go. Let me share this. All right, so the last link I gave was the installation, and but tread lightly, don't put it in an existing org, but get some practice in a free developer account with this. Work through my course to get your feet wet a little bit before you start interviewing for volunteer opportunities, because you need to understand some concepts that are not readily apparent when you're starting out and can get you in trouble, especially if you're inheriting an org that has already installed the Nonprofit Success Pack. They may be on an older version, like version 2, and need to upgrade, or they may be on an older version that's somewhere in version 3 and need to upgrade. They may have implemented the household account model. And if you don't know what that is, you're going to bomb out on your interview, or if you happen to pass the sniff test and they hire you as a volunteer, you may blow things up. So the last thing you want to do is to wreck the implementation for a nonprofit, someone that's trying to go out and do good work in the world to make the world a better place, and you go in and mess it up. That's not a good look. So I've seen people talking online, like in Reddit. There's a Salesforce subreddit out there that I go into from time to time. And there's a lot of words of warning, a lot of complaints out there about how people like me saying, oh, just go volunteer for a nonprofit. And so I do want to do my due diligence and give you some warnings that you need to understand the fundamentals of what you're getting yourself into. And so looking at links such as this, and let me give you this link. This is what is the household account model. And this is part of the documentation set for the Nonprofit Success Pack, which if you notice in the link, it's powerofus.force.com. And there's a ton of documentation here, fortunately, and so you can just peruse this like any other online help system. And that's what this is it's just this nested index of articles, and you can just go from one to the next and get certain questions answered. But back to that data model, this is one just small example or diagram of how these things relate. And even the terminology is different. When you're dealing with a for-profit business, opportunities are opportunities to do business and to make money by selling products or services. But in the nonprofit space, you're looking for volunteers and you're looking for donations, and a vast majority of the time and effort and energy spent in keeping a nonprofit alive is to work opportunities that have to do with donations and grants and ways of making money that aren't tied to number of hours worked or a product or a service or a widget or whatever it may be. So this household account model is one that you need to understand. And then as well, here is this plate of spaghetti. Okay, this is the Nonprofit Success Pack entity relationship diagram. So you can add to your list of acronyms that you've learned today, ERD, okay, and that is entity relationship diagram. And that's getting ready to get pasted into the chat to you all and not just to myself, because I learned from my mistakes. But look at this. There's the color legend here. The blue is a standard object, and you may recognize some of these standard objects from your studying towards admin certification, for example. These are some of the tested and true objects that we see all the time, such as account and contact, opportunity, campaign, lead. And you may understand how all those relate. But then in the pink are the people, relationship, and programs. So we have relationship, affiliation, address, and now account as well. You notice that inside of parentheses is household or organization. And so it's not necessarily a business, but it's a household oftentimes, or an organization of some sort. And then you've got level, engagement plan, which ties into tasks, which is a standard object. And then in yellow, you've got your fundraising pieces. And this would be how the money comes in with recurring donations, and then even account soft credit and GAU allocation, general accounting unit, partial soft credit deliverable and payment. And then in the gray are the lovely utility items, everyone's favorite, such as data import batches. And that's a real common occurrence as well in dealing with nonprofits, is a lot of data import from other systems. And I have worked on a couple of nonprofit projects, and this was several years ago, and it was to help friends that I knew to get experience. I landed the work, and then I had them do some of the work so that they had something on the resume. I don't do that anymore, so don't ask. But it was an interesting experience, because I was going out there and telling people, here's what to do. And so I thought, well, it'd be good if I actually did this, and not just be out there saying, do as I say, not as I do. So I actually went out and took a couple of projects, was able to land them because I had enough experience to pass the interviews and let them know as well that I'd be having other people helping me as well. I'm not going to be doing all the work, but they have some experience and some level of, and I would be providing the oversight, if you will. So that link is the entity relationship diagram. So the reason I'm showing you this is not to scare you to death, but to make you aware that this is not a walk in the park. This is not a cakewalk. This is involved, and it is really specific to the nonprofit space. Now, this will help you, though, in finding volunteer opportunities if you can speak to and understand what these things are and how they relate to one another. And the way that you do that is not just looking at this diagram, but also installing the Nonprofit Success Pack in a free developer account and playing around with it, okay? That's how you get experience. Now, another way that you can volunteer is to find your own opportunity through any sort of nonprofit org that you have access to, or friends or family that you know. It may be something related to your homeowners association. And but you can then, once you've gotten some experience, you can sign up for a 30-day free trial of the Nonprofit Success Pack. And this is more once you're ready to start committing to doing a Salesforce implementation for a nonprofit. Salesforce provides the Nonprofit Success Pack trial. It's a 30-day trial, which they will extend if you contact them. I'm going to put that in the links now. Now, a few things to really pinpoint and highlight on this is with salesforce.org. That's their nonprofit arm. And after our live time here together, you can always look up the 1-1-1 model of Salesforce and how they donate 1% of their profits, 1% of employees' time towards these nonprofit endeavors. And so this falls under that umbrella, is this nonprofit free trials. And then last I have heard, they will give away up to 10 nonprofit licenses. And then once you grow beyond that, they start charging. But I think that there's ways that you can get a free Salesforce org for your own nonprofit. And so beyond just going to Taproot or Catch a Fire and trying to convince some other nonprofit organization to hire you, if you are involved in a nonprofit locally to yourself or even anywhere in the globe, you can go through the process of working with that organization to file for their own nonprofit organization inside of Salesforce. And that can lead to either free or reduced rate licenses that then you could build your own experience, okay? Now, there's the nonprofit cloud, there's education cloud, and there's philanthropy cloud. Those are different solutions, different account models. And so you'll notice here that on this page, the sign up page where you can fill in the information related to your nonprofit, is that there's links here. If you are a higher education institution, start a trial for higher ed. If you're a K through 12 school district or network, start a trial for K-12 architecture kit. So this is where you start to branch out into other nonprofit spaces that have to do with education as well. And then there's philanthropy cloud and links for COVID-19 related resources that you can explore also. So there's a lot of options for how you can make your own experience, and you just may have to give away your time, but it's an investment in your career and in your future. And oh, by the way, you're doing some good as well, which looks really great on a resume and really, I don't want to say plays well, but is nice talking points. And if you can find something that you're passionate about and you care about, that's even better. You know, if you can find something that aligns with your own beliefs and goals, and you can help bring those things into a reality and help empower others and do good, then that's something that will really be conveyed in your talking in an interview, because you'll be passionate about it. And that'll come through and help you to get hired for other roles that you may be looking for down the road. And who knows, you may land a job with one of these nonprofits and start being paid, you know. Let's see, another link. And I think this is my last link, and then I'll get to the questions. There's about 5 questions, which is awesome. Is the Trail on Trailhead for administering nonprofit success pack. And I'll give you that as well. And this will be a Trailhead module or trail. There's different things. There's modules, there's trails, there's super badges. I get them all confused. I call everything a trail. But here's the link for that. And that will give you some hands-on experience with working in the nonprofit success pack and some of the basics and what that future holds. It's an hour and 25 minutes of fun and frivolity, but you can explore your customization options and some best practices. All of these things will be helpful for you to then go and start trying to volunteer. Don't do all this afterwards, but at the start of the process, you want to get some experience, make your own experience, and then you can start trying to think about landing some volunteer opportunities. All right. So now, questions. Daniel is asking, is My Trailhead an add-on service when you purchase Salesforce? Is there a way to access it in order to play around with creating content? Good question, Daniel. My Trailhead is an add-on service, and it is a way that companies can customize their own Trailhead experience for their employees. And so that does have a dollar amount attached to it. I don't know of a way to play around with it. I would get with your account rep for Salesforce to find out, to see if there's any sort of reduced pricing or trial period rather than having to commit to a long time. I was really excited when Salesforce announced My Trailhead as coming during Dreamforce 2018. I thought I might be able to build my own learning platform on My Trailhead, and then I saw the pricing and I decided not to. So and I didn't have a way to play around with it either. But the idea, I think, is good, that you can bake in Trailhead in general with your own custom solutions and trainings. And it is intended as a learning management system. And so there's a lot of LMSs out there. That's your next acronym that you may have learned today, is LMS. It's a little nerd talk. We always talk in acronyms. I don't know why that is. But I think their goal is to try and be an LMS, but I don't think it's there yet. I don't know what level of reporting it provides and all those sorts of behind the scenes things. So I don't know much about it, but that's called My Trailhead and is add-on service. So next we have Daniela from Peru. Hello, Peru. Greetings from Nashville area. I've got a question. I'm completely new in Salesforce. I am working on getting the Salesforce admin certification. I've already completed the admin trail and 2 super badges, but failed my first attempt. I don't work daily with the platform at all. I only have access to the trail in the sandbox. I am really interested in getting involved, practicing with the platform like real work. What would you recommend? So great question. And I do recommend that people spend a lot of time on the platform in order to prepare for any sort of certification that you're working on. So you can work through Trailhead modules, and then I do encourage you to work through my coursework. Of course, I've got my, and let me just show this. So if you go into browse, the first thing that pops up, and this is ByDesign, is my lighting experience admin course in part 1, and there's 4 different parts to this. And I work through all the different knowledge areas. And that gives you the context to cover all the knowledge areas on the exam. Now, other things that you can do in addition to that, that gives you some real world experience, and this is why I created this, is my Bootcamp series, starting with module 1, and there's 11 modules. And that 8th module I've made free, but the other modules are part of the subscription. It's $9.99 a month or $99 a year. But the idea here, as you work through all the different modules of my Bootcamp series, is that you make a portfolio of 6 applications, and those do ratchet up in complexity as you work through the different modules, okay? So there's the easy app pack here you see, and then the jobs and recruiters app pack. I show you how to create an app to manage your job search. Agile apps enhancements pack, contract management app foundations pack. So we go through and make a contract management application as well. So this is actually, I think, some of my finer work. And I originally charged $1,000 for it. And a lot of people bought it for $1,000. And then after doing a few boot camps, I decided this is the direction that education online is going, is I didn't feel right charging $1,000 at some point. And I just thought, well, if I can just make this available to the masses, I think that that would be awesome, because I went so much in depth on real world scenarios and examples throughout the duration of that boot camp. And I iterated on it, I think 3 times. And so I improved it several times. And then towards the tail end is where I'm getting into how to make your own experience through volunteering for nonprofit, for example. And I've got Resume and LinkedIn Accelerator. I've got Salesforce Interview Success, and then First 30-Day Success Pack, which is actually how to maximize your runway when you're starting your first real Salesforce job, and to do some impressive things that are easy, basically, so that people go, wow, this person really knows what they're doing. And that buys you a little time to figure out what you're doing if you feel like an imposter, okay? So how do I get a free developer org? Let me slap that in the chat. So one moment. And this is related to what I was saying earlier about installing the NPSP in a free developer account. So the link here is developer.salesforce.com/signup. And looks like this. Few caveats on that when you're signing up, and these are questions that I get all the time, and I understand, is for the company name, just put your own name there. Okay, don't put who you work for there necessarily. For your email address, use a personal email address, not something that you may lose access to ever. That way it can go with you, and you can keep this as an org indefinitely to be learning and working in. And then your username has to be unique across all Salesforce instances. So if you already have an account tied to your personal email address, you can always, like, for example, my email address is support@cloudcareercoach.com. It's another way that you can reach out to me is via email. Just gave you my email, support@cloudcareercoach.com. But one little trick that I do is that you can actually do like a plus whatever. And so for my live class that I'm teaching right now, that's the fall 20 class that I do. This is my username that I use. Now you're going to try and hack my account, I know, but it's support plus FA20, because I have so many different orgs because I teach live and I do all these on-demand classes. And with each class, I've got to start with a clean slate, a new free developer account. And so the way I keep track of these is through a naming convention. This plus FA20, this is a Gmail account, it's a Google business account. And so I'm able to add or append, and that will then forward to me. But the main point is that your username has to be unique. It has to be in the form of an email address. So it has to have @something.com or .net or .org, but it doesn't have to even be a valid email address, because you just need that for the login. But the email has to be a valid email address, and that has to be something ideally that belongs to you and not the company that you work for, in case you get laid off or you decide to go to greener pastures, which does happen quite often in the Salesforce space. How many more questions we got here? Okay, so Deidre, great question. I switched from my phone to computer and lost the previous chat messages. Would you mind sharing the course link again? Sure. And then also in the replay that I make available, which we're still working on the production of getting all this stuff out because it's so much content, and we're actually working on getting the replay from last week out, and we hope to accelerate this. But whenever we distribute those replays, we'll have all the links from the chat as well. But let me give you that link. So if you just go to learn.mikewheelermedia.com, and it's this Bootcamp 8. And then let me put that in the chat. So that's the free course, okay? And then Christina's saying our nonprofit doesn't use households. We require people to be placed in an organization, the renamed account objects, which is fine. It's one of those optional things. It depends on how your nonprofit works. And there's some nonprofits that deal more with households and individuals, and then others that deal more with organizations. And you can do, one or the other as far as, but the main thing is that with households, you may tend to have that be more for people that you're reaching out to or trying to serve. And then organizations may be more related to either partners that you work with or places where you're trying to get grants from or donations. All right, so Gregory is asking, what is the difference between the trail and installing the NPSP and a dev org licenses? So I think what you're getting at there is in this trail, there's probably a link to install, and I'm not sure if they tell you to install in your existing Trailhead account or to launch a new playground. and they're showing you the data model here. So, so then the main thing is, though, is that you have more than 30 days to play around with the Nonprofit Success Pack if you install it in a free developer account. Now, you can do that in any free developer account as long as you have space and the access rights to install apps. But the idea is that when you're ready to try and put a ring on it and do something official with a nonprofit, is in starting the trial for them, that starts the clock ticking for their 30-day trial. And then they mentioned that you can also request a trial extension by sending us a message, and here's the contact us link to try to get additional time. So this is where you actually have licensing that could end up incurring a cost if you're not qualified for the 10 free licenses. And speaking of that, that is something that Salesforce did many years ago, and I need to look and see. I've not taken the time to really dig into the weeds on that to see how many licenses they give away and what the stipulations are. There's some rules and regulations around that. There's paperwork that has to be submitted. All right, so good question. Christine is asking, would this potentially for a free 10-pack license include the category of a Catholic parish? I'm involved with one. I think that you can do that for churches, and so those would be nonprofits, and so you would just need to submit the paperwork, but I believe that there's no stipulation that it can't be a religious organization. So I would say try it and see, and I do know of churches that have done Salesforce for free using the Nonprofit Success Pack, the 10-pack license. So I would say yes. Nicole, Mike, I have the free dev account with 10 playgrounds that I use for Trailhead. So I would just repeat going through those same steps to set up a separate playground for my NPSP, correct? Yeah, you can do that. So in Trailhead now, you have the options of spinning up another playground basically. And so you could do that and should be able to install NPSP in that. If you want to do that, that should be fine. And then Malini, for doing administer NPSP in Trailhead, would you suggest I do it new Salesforce account, or can I do it in the same account using right now for the live class? So so Malini's in my live Monday night class. We just finished week 5 last week, and I probably should give you the link for that as well to get on the waiting list for the next one, which is starting in January. Let me put that in here, and then I'll answer your question. But here is the link for the live waiting list, and this will just way you can be alerted as soon as I open up registration. I would not install in the org that you're going through my live class in. I think that would be kind of destructive to the account model and may confuse you as you're trying to follow along live next Monday when I'm going into the next knowledge area, and you have things such as households or organizations and donations and some of the things that are renamed in the NPSP may throw you off. So I would avoid that and just do either a free developer account or another playground in Trailhead in order to install it in there, okay? All right, and then Conrad's asking, how many orgs can a person set up? I don't think there's a limit. And so the free developer accounts, I've probably over the span of the past 8 years signed up for over 100 of them between all the courses I've created and live sessions and just for my own learning. So I don't think there's a limit. And then as well for nonprofit things, I don't think there's a limit. They have to be legitimate use cases and legitimate nonprofits. And typically though, like if you're volunteering for a nonprofit that you don't have control of, you would be working with that nonprofit, telling them where to submit their paperwork and helping them to dot the I's and cross the T's. I had to think there for a second, so that the paperwork's done correctly, but they would own the org. It wouldn't be you that's the owner of the org, and you would set it up, get it implemented. And then maybe you can negotiate some sort of retainer or to have 5 or 10 hours a month of maintenance work for some sort of fee if they can afford it in order to continue to help out or whatever. The website links. All right, so another request for sharing links. So what I'm going to do, people are switching from phones to computers, et cetera, which is awesome. I've got a bunch of links here just in this list. I'm just going to copy and paste all this. So this is kind of a replay of all the links. And then when I do distribute the replay, which may be a few days from now, I will distribute those resources as well. Did my paste work? Come on, man. Maybe it's not letting me. Is it too much? Oh, well. So let me try a few of these. Do a smaller list. All right. Yep. So there's several of the links. Okay. And then let me just grab the last of these here. And we have gone 50 minutes. See there? Time flies when you're having fun. And there's the rest. Okay. All right. So any other questions? Looks like there's a few. Okay, so Chris, that's a good question, Christina. I believe a sandbox doesn't give me a copy of all my production data. Would I be able to copy my production org into a developer org? You can do that, but it's manually. So sandboxes are in instances where you work in Salesforce and it's like a paid enterprise level situation where you've got multiple licenses and then you pay for, there's like several free developer sandboxes that can be tied to your org, but you can't really port over the data very easily. And then there's other types of sandboxes. I think ultimately in that type of work environment, that's not available to people that are just free on the platform, but inside of organizations that are paying, is typically what you want to kind of fight for or request is a full copy sandbox so that you can then push all your data into a sandbox so you can do true testing and stress testing, et cetera. Now, if you do a free developer org, the way that you can get any data is you'd have to export it and then import it. There are tools to do some exports and imports. I'm not going to recommend one over another. They're pretty expensive typically, and with a free developer account, you only have like 5 megabytes of space. So it doesn't take very many accounts with other data attached to it for you to blow through that very quickly. So I would do just a small subset of data, and I would get some sort of snapshot of that sandbox then so that you can revert back to it if you need to refresh or anything like that. So Constance, will you do a live platform app builder cert class next year? Probably not. I did one last year, and oh, by the way, let me show this. And I'm still sharing my screen. I keep it on screen way too much. Let me show you something lurking in MyQuiler Media Plus. Under developer, platform app builder live replay. So I did this, when did I do this? Okay, here's the dates. I answered my own question. August 22nd to October 24th of 2019. So it's about a year old, okay? But I did do a live class then, and that is available on MyQuiler Media Plus for subscribers. And so I've got that replay that has the slide decks as well, and the replays. Now, the reason that I probably won't do another one is because there's a smaller audience for Platform App Builder and everyone's in a different place. And so where I have found the most success is doing the beginning of the journey with the admin path, because most people are new to the platform and everyone is relatively in the same place. And so it makes it easier for me to teach that audience. And what I found with Platform App Builder is that some people had 5 or 7 certifications and they were trying to pick up Platform App Builder. Others had just gotten admin, and some were brand new to the platform and trying to just jump right in. And so there were some issues with people saying, I already know this. And then others saying, where are we? What's going on? This is too complex. So I would recommend that you just check out the replay on my platform, okay? And you should be able to cut and paste from the chat. I don't know, Conrad. I think you've mentioned that before, or maybe you can, I don't know if you can copy it somehow or not, but I'll distribute. So if I pull from this episode for my podcast, and or if I put anything on YouTube, such as the replay, I'll make sure all the resources are there. I'll be sending out an email as well. All right, so when Angela's asking, when creating a new dev org, I believe in the latest release, the company name field now corresponds to the domain name of your dev org. Just thought it was worth mentioning. Yes, thank you. So, you know, depending on what you put there, that will be in the URL of your actual free account. And so, for example, I put MyQuiler Media in the company name for my latest org that I set up. And so that was part of my domain name. So you may want to be mindful of that so that kind of keep it professional, especially if you're wanting to share anything as far as a portfolio or work that you do in that org. You don't want to have it be something embarrassing. So, so do put that, keep that in mind whenever you're setting up your org. Okay. So with that said, we've gotten through all the questions. It's awesome time together, and we're hitting at 55 minutes. So a little bit of extra time there for you. And so we will be doing this again next week, same time, same place. And so go to MikeWitherMediaLive.com to register for those upcoming episodes. And I will be sending out replays. We'll be leveraging some of this for the podcast as well. I'll be sending out the resources for you. And we are so glad to be able to spend this time with you together. And so we'll see you next week, same time, same place. And until then, I'll see you in the cloud.